Welcome to the Brain Bar. It's been a while. I remember way back in middle school, there was a point where I got invited to a Halloween party, and I was so excited. And I went dressed like a hippie, and it was my first time playing Spin the Bottle. I got my Banaka ready, and I was like, I'm going to kiss a girl. And when it came to my turn, I spun the bottle, and it landed on Chelsea Stone with an arm brace and leg brace. You know, I was like, fuck it. I would go up and kiss her. And it was like slow motion. She went for me, I went for her. She turned her head and got a kiss on the cheek. And I was so disappointed. I was in middle school. I had an arm brace and a leg splint. And I then discovered that I was different. After the party, I went to my dad's car, and he sensed something was wrong. And I said, you know what? Like, I didn't get that kiss. And he said, you know what, Kyle? You know, Chelsea Stone or whoever, find someone who loves you for you. And that will go a million miles. Over the years, I created a new self, the Kyle style, some of you know. And I got really good at dating. I got rid of the arm splint and the leg brace, and I really owned the fact that I had a brain aneurysm at 11 years old. A lot of people were attracted to that, and because of the Kyle style. But one time, I was really excited about a girl. And I remembered what my dad said. Find someone who loves you for you, and that will go a million miles. So I booked a flight to Brazil and chased a woman and returned with a finger. Returned with a ring on her finger. I'm not gonna throw excuses out for my aphasia, but because that's another story. It didn't work out, right? We divorced 3 amazing years, but I mean, it seemed like we traveled over a million miles. But I learned so much from that relationship. It taught me self-love. It taught me loving for another person, loving for another friend, loving for, you know, out of this universe. Loving in a different culture that's different from mine. And that's where I developed this sense of perspective, because every single person has their own perspective on the world from you. So every time that you think you're right, I guarantee it, possibly not. Yeah. So, I wanted to really emphasize this, is love is the most powerful force in the universe. Fear is also the most powerful force in this universe. And tonight, I guarantee, if you listen to each and every one of these perspectives, you'll walk away learning something new. So, here's how this is going to go down. A salon goes way back into the 1700s French era. It's a gathering of like-minded people to get together and learn about something new based on the theme. And they are like little micro shares, 10-minute shares, and to really expand the mind. Listen, you know, from Chelsea Stone and, you know, my middle school days, and to my Brazilian, to, you know, I'm still learning. I'm still learning about love because I think it is an ongoing process. But I don't think love gurus and love coaches have it all figured out. I really took my time to really put together these, curated these 3 different perspectives to have you determine for yourself. And there's one rule and one rule only. There's no right and there's no wrong. It's only perspective. So listen, hear these speakers speak, and I guarantee it, each and every single person is going to come up with their own solution. Okay? Are you guys ready? All right. Without further ado, Sugary.
I'm very grateful to be here, to be part of the Rain Bar family. This is really just an amazing thing that Kyle has built over the years, and it's really great to see how it's just been able to grow. Speak a little bit about the Empathy Project, which is a project that's very, very near and dear to me. Let's just take it back to the pandemic. Nobody was doing really anything, truly. And I was like, I need to do something, because I was seeing all the news that was happening in the world, and it just seemed like nobody was really talking to each other. People were just trying to entrench themselves further apart and just stick to their own guns. And I was like, there just needed to be something that would hopefully spark that conversation and inspire that thing that I felt was missing. And of course, the thing that was missing, in my opinion, was empathy. So I set upon myself to just create a shirt. This is it. It had a different fabric back then, but it was what empathy felt like. It was lowercase. It didn't demand anything. It was in a neutral tone. It just sort of asked permission. Okay, fine. I'll print 300 shirts. Good. And I'll sell it to my friends. I know enough people. I'll make it work. I guess what I didn't expect was that in a week I had sold out of all 300 shirts, and more people asking, where are you able to get these? I love them. And I guess I hit on a nerve, and I was like, okay, it seems like this is something that society wants, culture wants. So I was like, how do I take this to the next step without just printing more shirts and continue to sell them? I was like, we have to get people into the idea of buying into empathy itself, but in terms of allowing their expression and freedom of choice, we leave that open, because empathy can only be inspired in the most natural way, through dialogue and conversation. You have to be inspired toward empathy. Nobody can expect you or force you down that path. So the way to express it was, we got 7 different artists to do 7 different unique designs all around the idea of empathy. And each one was tied to a nonprofit that was dear to them. And it spans the gamut from small charities to large charities, from charities that support gaming rehabilitation for children with disabilities, all the way to Jose Andres' World Central Kitchen. It's wide, but it expresses the diversity of human need. And before I kind of go further into the nuts and bolts of the Empathy Project, really I want to share here today a little bit about a personal journey for why this ends up being something that is relevant to the Brain Bar. Because as you kind of notice, what Kyle had said was that this thing is all about perspective. There is no right and there's no wrong. But if I'm curious about what it is you are going through, what kind of struggles that you are trying to go through, I'm really trying to feel you. I'm trying to create a connection. That connection ends up being the most important central idea to our ability to function as a society. We have to see each other as a mirror of ourselves. And so in that sense, this effort to generate and inspire greater empathy in the world ends up being in and of itself an act of self-love. We are going out into the world to try to see people from their perspectives. We're trying to get people to feel a little bit more beyond their own place in their lives. They're step out of one's shoes, right? Which is the often talked about perspective, but a lot of people just, they don't even realize how hard that is unless you decide to make that journey. So as I kind of like go through this and I dream further about where this entire project can go, I always try to examine this with the perspective of hoping that this is an inspirational tool, that more people could in one way express themselves by wearing the shirt, but really keep in mind the central idea is that if you care for others, in essence, you are caring about yourself, because all our struggles are different, but remarkably, they are only nuanced versions of similar struggles that we all share. The human experience may be vast, but there are a lot of similarities to draw from, and that becomes the sort of capstone of the whole thing. Since we've launched, the Empathy Project has now gone worldwide. Just 5:30 this morning, I had a friend who had purchased the shirt and went to India. And apparently, she was mobbed. A whole bunch of people went to her and they were like, "This is such an amazing shirt. Like, I love the idea. This is so great." Another week ago, somebody bought a shirt and went to Australia and wore it and got a very similar reaction. What that tells me is that there is a commonality to what we crave and what we need. We want to be connected to each other. We want to feel each other more. And this shirt, in its very basic gesture, just offers that permission to go do so. But it is only a tool, right? The whole thing still relies on all of you to feel inspired enough to talk amongst each other, to care for each other, and to get involved in each other's lives. So this is one small act, but in the future, the Empathy Project and its many iterations allows for people to use this as a mechanism to get more involved on the issues that sort of matter to them. There is fully an idea in the next iteration of the Empathy Project for me to work with even more charities of a greater variety. I mean, I've been talking with your next speaker, Maddie, about working with her organization to see if we can do a project around the Empathy T-shirt campaign that supports stroke victims and identifying the right charities to support that way. Really, if I can leave you all with anything, the simple idea is this. As you go forward and you feel inspired by anything you see, be it this or be it anything else that you'll hear tonight, that you will take stock in this and that you will go into your own communities, of which this is actually one amazing community, and see if you can feel inspired and compelled to have the discussions that are necessary so that you can arrive at a place where empathy becomes a deeper part of your life. Lord knows the need is vast, and we really need to hear from all of you. We need to feel from all of you more than anything. So thank you so very much. I appreciate you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Yep.
what inspired your empathy effort? Was it lack of empathy in your own life?
It was lack of empathy that I was seeing overall in society, and there was one way I knew how to do it. I come from a background of music and music representation, so I worked with a gentleman for many years called John Baptiste, and I got a front row seat to seeing how art could impact people. Now, this was a moment in the pandemic where I just felt I wanted to do something, and I was sitting in my room, my very, very small room, and I was like, okay, well, let's just slap this on and see what would happen. Because it took off unexpectedly in that way, I was like, okay, well, this is a visual art medium, so let's continue that. But I never lost sight of how art can ignite passion and therefore inspire a movement, which is exactly what I'm trying to pursue. Yeah.
So Akpan, and then we'll end it with Anthony.
All right.
Yeah, so I was curious, what are some examples from your own time wearing the empathy shirt, inspiring, life-changing conversations that you've had with people because of the shirt?
I was on the R train heading home on a late night, like 2:30 a.m. Yeah, but you're gonna love this story. I mean, there was an old man, and he looked a little disheveled, but he didn't seem like he was necessarily homeless. He was just, he was an older guy. I think he was coming from a late shift or something like that. And he was like staring at me, and I was wondering what that was about. And then right as the train was pulling in, he came up to me. He was just like, "Young man, what is that shirt about?" And I was like, well, first of all, I'm not really that young, but thank you. But I just really quickly, because we were already pulling up to the station, I just kind of let him know in a liner note what the whole movement was about. And he basically told me that he not only loved the shirt and that he was going to buy it and let everybody know, but he was like, he's like, I really wish more people your age cared about this idea. He's like, my own family, he's like, I can't even get my grandson to focus on something when I talk to him about, what's going on in the world and how he can make a difference. He's too focused on TikTok, and all these things kind of like distract him away from those things. And he was like, I haven't seen anybody wear something, at least for me, that was this profound. And I was like, well, I mean, I really appreciate it. I mean, it really is just a simple act. He's like, yeah, but sometimes simple ideas are what you need in this day and age to propel change forward. And I thought that was extremely powerful to be getting a message like that at 2:30 a.m. from somebody that was literally just sitting right across from me, and we didn't know each other. So he gave me his card. He was like, please write to me. I want to purchase a shirt. And he did. So it was amazing.
And Anthony?
I'm just going to ask if there's any other single word or feeling or emotion that you'd like to see on a t-shirt someday outside of empathy.
Community. Community.
Yeah. Thank you
so much. Appreciate it.
It's something I do.
Without further ado, I don't want to take her spotlight. So without further ado, Maddie.
So I wanted to start by saying the last and only time that I've ever been in this bar was actually just a few months ago, sitting right over there. I came here on a first date a few months ago. It unfortunately did not transpire to include a second date, but that's his loss, not mine. So, poor Mohan did not stand a chance. It just, literally the minute he asked me like, oh, so do you like pickleball? I was like, this is over. This is not going anywhere. So, I did not see him again, but that's fine. I actually have a lot of, like a whole slew of dating stories. My dating life is filled with like mishaps and just dates that did not go right. But I mean, Kyle told me I only have 10 minutes, so I feel like we could talk about that later. Let's get to the good stuff. So I feel like for me, there's an added layer of complication when it comes to my relationship with love and dating and the brain. And that's because, as Kyle had mentioned earlier, I'm a stroke survivor myself. So I had a stroke, I was completely paralyzed on one side, I had to learn how to walk, how to use my hand. I had to learn how to swallow, how to speak. I had to learn literally everything all over again. And I'm telling you that because that's to say that I really was not thinking about dating for a very long time after the stroke because I had bigger fish to fry. Before I had the stroke, I was very happy-go-lucky, I would say. I really viewed the world as like, the world is my oyster. I can date whoever I want and, you know, just have my pick, whatever. And it was great. But then after the stroke, I really lost my confidence. I lost my confidence. I thought, who would ever want to date me after having had something like this happen? Like, I'll never meet anyone who will be able to see beyond my disability, beyond the fact that I had a stroke, and just that was eating away at me such that I wasn't willing to put myself out there and meet new people. And when I was thinking about what to write for this talk, I was talking with Kyle and I was talking to my podcast co-host, Tawny, and Kyle was like, write a journal. And then Tawny, my co-host, was like, write me a letter. So I kind of did both. So that's what I'm going to read to you today about dating post-stroke from my experience. February 2021, 3.5 years post-stroke. And forgive me, it's very dark in here, so I'm going to be like looking at it like that. Dear Tawny, hello from the beautiful island of Tortola, British Virgin Islands. I've been having a grand old time here swimming, exploring, and meeting new people. And speaking of meeting new people, I have a question for you. Do you ever do something just for the story? Just for the potential content that could come out of it? Because I do. I, for one, am not above exploiting my lived experience for content, especially when it comes to my love life. So, yeah, so I have a story for you, if you do, and I will tell it to you in the form of a poem. A Lover's Limerick. I just met a nice Irish lad. A sailor on an island, I'm not mad. We drank too much with talk of us. One thing led to another, potentially sus. I'm back in the game, not too bad. Yes, I'm really funny, I know. I had way too much fun writing that. Anyways, Tawny, all jokes aside, I just wanted to say that you were right. I was so nervous to put myself out there for fear that no one would ever be able to see beyond my disability, but that's not true. My brain might be broken in many ways, but I'm worthy of love and I'm worthy of fun experiences, and I have an amazing story to tell. The me of a few years ago would never have been able to fathom that one day I'd be traveling the Caribbean, getting drunk on a yacht, sailing the seas with two hot sailors. I'm learning different ways to present my story and meet people, and I realize that I have this unique power to curate the version of myself I want to present. And that I have so many different sides to me, my stroke is not the sole defining thing. And if I see myself that way, that I'm multifaceted with so much to offer, then chances are other people will too. Can't wait to catch up on everything when I'm back. That's my journal entry. So, I love this example because it highlights a very specific moment in time for me, and that is the moment when everything changed. The moment when I no longer was viewing myself as like a victim. Oh, why'd this happen to me? Like, this sucks. Like, I'm never going to be worthy of love. No one will ever like me. I'll never be able to connect with new people. Like, no. That was a moment when I really put myself out there and was like, you know what, I'm just going to see what happens. And then, look, I'm meeting new people. I'm having a fun time. I started getting back out there, going on dates and all of that, and it was a lot of fun. My next thing, and this is what I'm going to end on, is I want to end with just one quick story. And this story was my light bulb moment. As Kyle says, my stroke of genius. I had a stroke, obviously, so when I was in the hospital in those early days recovering, I was learning how to walk. Well, first I was learning to sit in a wheelchair, then I was learning how to walk with a cane and all of that. I was in inpatient rehab, and you know, my parents and my siblings would come visit me every night, and my parents literally forced me to walk up and down the hallway, like patrol up and down the hallways of my rehab clinic every night, because they knew that to me it was so important to get back some semblance of who I was before, to be able to regain these skills that I'd once taken for granted and that I no longer knew how to do. And I didn't want to put in the work. I was tired and I just wanted it to just comeback, which wasn't ever going to be the case. But so they forced me to walk up and down the halls. And I remember one day, I'm with my cane, my brother is on my left side, I have my cane in my right side, and I'm like lifting up the cane and then like lugging my left leg forward, and it's like this huge effort. I can only take a few steps, and then I have to sit down in my wheelchair because I just could not manage. And I'm walking past and I see my friend who's sitting inside, like sitting in his room on a bed, and he's quadriplegic from a gunshot wound to the neck, and he will likely never walk, never use his arms ever again. And he had told to me, Maddie, listen, you have a very, very unique opportunity here. Like, you are in a position to show the world, to show others, show yourself, show the therapist, everyone who said that you would not recover, that you'll never walk again. Like, you are young, you are full of life. Like, you can just go show them, prove everyone wrong. And I was like, wow, that hits home for me, because he was right. Like, this is a very unique opportunity that I have, that we all have, to just blaze forward and cut down all of our boundaries and whatnot. That's not the right phrase, but I feel like you know what I mean. And so that conversation I had with him, like, it really ultimately drives every move that I make and every decision that I take. He also said to me, because he was kind of religious, he's like, I want you to know that, as the saying goes, God gives his strongest soldiers the toughest battles. And that's you, Maddie, because you are tough. You can handle this. That's why you have this challenge, because you're someone who can actually, you know, take it and turn it into something good, and that's what you should do with this experience. And so that's really like motivated me to do that in all facets of my life. I want to share with you all one more poem which I wrote. This time a haiku. So it's easier, a lot easier to write this time. In life, there's romance. Find love in a hopeless place. Time to take the chance. Thank you. A lover's limerick. Did you like that?
Does anyone have any questions? We have time for 2 or 3.
So I went through a very similar thing after getting brain surgery and all that. And the one thing that I outreach with people who are going through things like this, is what advice would I have actually listened to? So I want to know, what advice do you think you would tell yourself that could have made the process of accepting your situation and moving through it successfully? What advice would you give yourself?
I think I would say take it one day at a time. I think that might have been something that I would have listened to, because I really just wanted like a quick solution, like just someone fix me like right now. And it took me a while to realize, like, no, I'm gonna have to actually like put in these repetitions, put in this effort in order to get back to where I want to be. But I think, like, you know, it's knowing it's okay to slow down and take it one step at a time and be patient with yourself.
I love what you said about how you approach your life as, you know, you're so strong, so tough, you wouldn't encounter a situation that you couldn't overcome. Very fearless attitude, and I love it. So I'm curious, like, if there's a goal on your bucket list that you want to share, like something you always wanted to try that you had a chance to.
Well, I would love to do a marathon one day, and I don't need to run it, but like just complete one. That's definitely been a goal of mine. Yeah. I love to travel, so going to more places.
We're going to Bali.
Yeah, Kyle and I are going to Bali. Everyone should join. I'm going to keep pushing this Bali trip. It's May 10th. May 10th.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the marathon races. I run those, and I'd love to help you.
Oh yeah, let's connect about that. Definitely, I would love to. Do an all jump at once.
All right. Thank you, Maddie.
Thank you. Thank you, Kyle.
I want to bring up this last speaker, and he's going to go in depth in the brain and find love, and a little AI and a little hacking too. Without further ado, Moran Scherf.
So I'm a neuroscientist. I spent the last 15 years studying the brain. I work with patients who undergo brain surgery for extreme conditions, and this gives us a chance to also study their brain while they're being operated on. And this is a good opener in the context of love, but it actually doesn't help us in any way, because the message of the first point I was going to say is that we don't really have a site in the brain for love. Even though scientists have looked for it, there's no one location that kind of, if you poke it, people fall in love, you turn it off, people fall out of love. And in that sense, it's a lot more complex, and I'll give you a second still what we know about it. But before maybe I'd ask a question just to kind of get a sense of who you are. How many people are in love right now in this room? Okay. How many people were in love in the last year? Okay. How many people have been in love in the last 10 years? Okay, I'm going to be more specific, and this is where I kind of try to get your sense. When I said love, I assumed that you had an interpretation of that, but it's not obvious what I meant by it. You could love a plant, love yourself, love an animal. You can love a product. Half the people in the world are in love with an iPhone. The reason it's so hard to study that is because the definition of love is so vague. When you ask, are you in love? People give you different answers. So we tried to study love in the traditional way, the one that kind of Shakespeare wrote about or Picasso drew, which is a love between two people, kind of a very classical Romeo and Juliet. She says she's dead, he drinks the potion. That's the one that we kind of focused on. And that's the one I'm going to try to spend the next 5 minutes on. In neuroscience, scientists definitely think about two types of emotion. There's the classic one or the basic one and complex one. Just to give you a sense, classic ones are the ones you probably intuitively would say this is the one that you see in the movie Inside Out. That's like about them neutral first, doesn't really count. That's number one. And then there's sadness, there's anger, there's fear, there's surprise. Those are the classical. And then there are complex ones. And the complex ones are complex because we don't know how to find them in the brain in one place. Complex would be love. It would also be awe, the feel of something is bigger than you. Jealousy. Those are all things that are much more complex, and still they exist not just in humans but in other animals. Monkeys, birds, cats, they all exhibit versions of that. So we know it's free, so we know we can find them across species and see what's common. Here is the bottom line. If you look at the brain, there's typically two ways to study the brain. One is the hardware and one is the molecules. If you look at it, like my intuition is like a car, there's the car itself, and then there's the oil and the gas that goes inside. If you parallel it in the brain, there's the hardware of the brain, and then there are molecules. And it turns out that what influences love more than anything is the combination of molecules in your brain. So the same brain with different molecules undergoes different stages of love. And there are 4 molecules, we call them neurotransmitters, that kind of dominate the love experience, but also they dominate the versions of love that you experience in one encounter of love. Dopamine is one, serotonin is the other, oxytocin is the third one. There's a combination of all of them, but essentially they kind of go in line with also the narrative of love that many of us have when we imagine a love story in a Hollywood movie. There's the experience of falling in love, which amplifies one molecule over others. That's the oxytocin. That's the one that you experience when you see him or her, when you kind of are infatuated, when you want to express it in different ways. The first weeks, days, hours of falling in love, that's usually what you see in the movie, mostly because that's kind of the classical experience of like a movie. She sees him, he sees her, he sees him, she sees her, and they kind of like study it and you follow the sunset and so on. That's dominated by one molecule. The bad news about this one, it decays very fast. So the experience of this lasts sometimes weeks, but after some time, it gets replaced by a different molecule, dopamine, which is the one that has to do with more stability and a different type of love. The one that you imagine when you look at kind of couples that are long-term, that have more of a kind of a long view of the relationship, and they also endure a lot more of the volatility. Oxytocin, what's good about it is that it's very powerful, but if the person next to you acts like the people we heard about before, bad date influences, you also drop out of that very fast. So it's very volatile. You can quickly end a love if it's based on oxytocin, whereas if dopamine encountered by now, if they end up, I don't know, what's something that people don't like on a first date? Being rude. Rude, thank you. And she rude something like this. Think about dopamine will sustain that. You will actually be okay with it. And then there's the third one that kicks in a bit after, which is serotonin, that has to do with empathy and love. And that's the love that you experience towards people, even if they're absent. So up to now, if you go apart from your partner, if you spend a lot of time apart, you will actually start forgetting the experience, and you will replace it with something else. But you won't experience this. The third one is the one that kind of kicks in many times. For instance, when the partner is gone, so you sit with older people, they lose their partners, and they still experience love because something of the essence of the other person stayed with them, and that's a third level. There's a fourth one that I kind of skipped in the beginning. I'm going to skip right now, but just kind of hear that's testosterone. That's a male-dominated version of love. It's dominated in men. It exists in women as well. And the only reason I'm mentioning it right now is because we learn more and more about this one's impact on the relationship in two domains. One is in friction, in moments where you actually have a kind of problems with couples, and during pregnancy. They're unrelated, the two of them, but turns out that testosterone levels are very much manifested in those states. To give you an intuition, a recent work by a colleague of mine that works a lot on studying the molecules that impact love and perfume. So he basically tries to make this potion that will make him or her fall in love with someone. He basically tried to see what molecules make our molecules increase, so you will kind of find someone more attractive and more trustworthy, more empathy, and so on. And one of the things he does for the study is he brings people to the lab and he tries to see naked, to kind of, meaning with no perfume, what is impacting your experience of in laughter, so with someone without any anxiety? Basically, purely attraction-based and chemistry-based. So the studies that he does look like this. What's your name? Avi. Avi comes to the lab to participate in a study. We will tell Avi we're interested in studying relationship and so on. This experiment is going to be about smells. You come to the lab, someone shakes your hand, asks you to sit down. They says, wait here, we're going to come back in a few minutes to start the study. And then they go away. But the reality is that the study already started. It happens in the waiting room while Avi is waiting to be called to do. And what they show in this study is that within about less than 5 minutes from the moment someone brought you to the room and shook your hand or tapped your shoulder or something like this, people typically bring their hand that was shaken close to their nose. They basically smell the other person that talked to them. Is a way to, without saying a word, essentially have what's called histochemistry. Your brain evaluates how good are they responding chemically. All the people in the lab basically had the hand that was shaken, and it's only in the hand that was shaken, and it's only if the other person is from the sex that you like. So if you're homosexual and the other person is a man who shakes your hand, you're gonna do it. If it's a woman, you won't do it. Same with if you're a lesbian and a woman shakes your hand, you're gonna do it. If a man, you wouldn't do it. More than that, if the person who shakes your hand has a glove, which is another condition that I tried, you won't do it. So it's really about you and them rubbing your hands, having smells, kind of just check, and then you kind of check with your mind, with your nose, how compatible you are. The thing is, you wouldn't know how to even interpret that. It's not like you say, okay, 7. Something happens, and your brain knows how to read that, and you just go with it. This was the first, and this is just one version. Afterwards, they start speaking. But think about it, you change your mind. But at the very beginning, this is one way by which our brain essentially assesses other people. Why is it interesting? Why they assess a pregnancy? Because once this was discovered, once we discovered that there's something about the chemistry, a few things emerged. One, our smell, our odors aren't just emerging from us. It's not something fixed. It's the combination of whether we did something before, like sports, whether we put perfume, and what we ate. A lot of the smells in your body are the output of your gut bacteria digesting food and so on. And so in a way, the cynical way of saying that, it could be that it's not that Avi fell in love with Jasmine, it's that the bacteria in Avi's belly fell in love with the bacteria in Jasmine's belly, and they just use those two vehicles to get them together so they can actually exchange each other with the two vehicles just kind of conduit for the bacteria's love to each other. But once we knew that, this group had a variety of studies that kind of look at testosterone's impact on love. For example, and that's the one that I like the most, and I think I'm going to soon end. and I'll draw you, and I can ask them more about anything you want. What they saw is that testosterone exists in the bodies of men and women, and there are moments where it kind of gets emitted or get out a lot. One of those moments, particularly, is when you cry. And they had a theory, and the theory was that tears aren't just a way to express sadness, they're actually part of love. To do that, to prove that, or to look at that, they invited people, they put posters on the university and said that we need people to come to the lab who are willing to cry. Only women showed up. Not clear if it's because women cry more than men, or if it's they're willing to admit that, or whatever it is, but only women showed up. So this study, version 1, was only done on women, and they're now trying to recruit actively men who would just be doing that. And what they did is they asked the women to record a sad story of love, and then tears started pouring, and they collected the tears. And then they had a sample of tears from a woman who recently had a heartbreak or something bad happened to her. And then they analyzed the chemistry of those tears. And they saw indeed that there's a lot more testosterone in those tears. And what they saw is that if you actually spread those tears in the room, and there's a man within 11 feet from those tears, it actually impacts testosterone and drops it. So when a woman cries, it makes a man around her be less aggressive and more empathetic. And this is one theory to what is the purpose of tears, because humans are among the almost only, some animals do it but afraid, that actually have tears coming out of our, we don't need tears. We can clean our eyes with water without tears, but humans have that. And one of the theories is that it's a way for us to basically emit the chemicals that help others feel testosterone. Okay, so I said it about male, they didn't try female, but that's the best version. I'll say about pregnancy. We also know that pregnancy kind of plays with those hormones. Primarily, it actually blocks them. So, in a way, the version of the way of saying that kind of in a very simple way, even though it's more me interpreting it rather than the truth, I would say is that you are spending a lot of time in your mind evaluating your partners when you're single and dating. But once you're pregnant, you're basically, your brain's saying there's no more chance, there's no reason anymore to keep asking because I'm now stuck with this person for at least 9 months. I might shut down the mechanism that actually evaluates that. And the interesting thing about that is that taking the pill actually replicates this experience. So it's having the birth control, the pill drops down women's ability to actually use the sensory mechanism that evaluates men based on testosterone. So if you want kind of take my advice for this, if you're seeing a guy for a while and you like him, and you say maybe he's the guy, I would suggest stop birth control for like a month and then smell him. If he still smells good to you afterwards, then he is the guy. But as long as you're birth control, you might be fooling yourself. Okay, I'm going to finish with the last sentence I promised Kyle I'm going to say, then we can talk about anything. I told you about the chemistry of that. There's one kind of new thing that kicks into the world of love research that shifts everything and kind of throws a little bit of a wrench on all the works we're doing in the brain, and that is machines and AI. The last 3 years have shown a strange to me, but real effects of people decline in the level of empathy and love towards other humans. It's not in the US much yet, but 2 countries, Denmark and Japan, are very salient in that there's now a decrease in population because people don't have sex. So young people just stop having sex. It's almost like the numbers are staggering. And basically there are no more babies coming in those two nations. And it's when you ask them why do you not go on dates and so on, they basically say this is just leading to heartache and difficulty, and I have to put myself out there. It's nothing good comes out of it. But I have this here Siri, and she always does what I want, and Alexa always responds to me pleasantly, and Cortana. Like they're all, in a way, young people stopped kind of even chasing that. Now, for a while, this was kind of anecdote. People didn't believe it's going to be the case. But now that it's been substantial number of people, and it's starting to spread in South Korea. So level, it used to be very, very many babies. Now it's like level, and it's starting to kind of go to other countries. There's a kind of growing fear among scientists that people basically are replacing or will replace, especially younger people, replacing love for humans and relationship with humans with machines. The reason that it's alarming is because there's an industry that actually tries to amplify it, right? There's a lot of people that make money from you spending more time on those social encounters rather than in the real world. So there's a lot of engineers in Silicon Valley who actually make an effort to get you there more. The porn industry picked up on that. There's a lot of money there. So now there's more and more companies in the porn world that are trying to basically create VR porn, robot porn, and basically say, we can give you a lot of the experience or the tactile experience in machines, which will draw even more experience there. And right now, as the AI becomes really good in communicating, there's a big question mark that kind of neuroscientists ask, are we changing our dynamics of love such that they're going to have to bring me in a year to tell you also what happens to your brain when you fall in love with Alexa? And right now, it's not in the US, and it's not popular enough to be a thing, but it's enough to kind of raise alarms in scientists that maybe it's something that's not just an anecdote, but a real thing. I'm going to stop here.
The question.
Well, thank you. We have time for 2 to 3 questions. Kenny.
Hi, thank you for that really interesting talk. Just because there's 4 main molecules of love, does that mean there isn't any others, or they just haven't been discovered yet? Or is it more like how they play together?
So the molecules that was happening in your brains, the molecules that we call pheromones, are the ones that in animals are dominating, and so there are many more. I spoke about what the stages of love in your brain that you experience. There's an entire world of pheromones, which is all the molecules that you use to essentially amplify attraction. Tons of them. That's what the perfume industry is trying to maximize. So when you buy Chanel 5, the chemists behind Chanel 5 have studied a lot of men and women and basically sprayed things on them and checked which of the chemicals that they spray makes them have dilated pupil and make them look at, let's say, a heterosexual man, make them look at pictures of women for longer time and so on. And basically they found an entire industry, and this is what people basically sell you when they sell you kind of perfume, a way to attract the other person. And then there's tons of molecules.
I was curious because you mentioned testosterone, serotonin, oxytocin, and dopamine, but not estrogen.
So estrogen is the testosterone version of a female. Testosterone is just more dominant. It's the one that dominated women. The testosterone is dominated men. But I didn't mention other. There's acetylcholine. There are others that I mentioned. They're just not as popular in the centers of love as those 4. And those also map to stages of love that we can kind of explain. The falling in love, the dopamine I didn't say, but dopamine is related to sexual behavior. So it's in many kind of party drugs, they put that and it kind of elevates the chances of like kind of sexual experiences and so on. But those are the 4 that you should take for the quiz.
Brian.
Great question. So, like, what about emotional attachment? Is it like a physical, understanding of that? So they did not just, kind of love as far as, the attraction, but they say there's also this attachment, dependency that's formed that's almost comes like a drug itself.
So that's the third one. So the serotonin, that's the one that I give an example from like the party world. MDMA. It's one of those kind of drugs that are very popular. MDMA is basically a boost of serotonin and presses your brain, lasts for about 8 hours, and it would make you fall in love with everyone. But so it speaks to empathy. Like you would, in a way, like you're under serotonin, and this is now being studied a lot in New York because the drug basically became acceptable for research and neuroscience. So we can now give it to people in the lab and see what happens. Essentially, the feeling of love that you experience, I don't know if you had it yourself or not, but I thought so. Asking for a friend. But so the experience people report isn't just like I love him more. I straight at the time I feel towards them, and this kind of everything in the world is in a way that kind of the joke would be that if you give it to the entire world for one day, you end more wars and everything because you cannot really understand why, but you suddenly love people that you had a lot of anger towards you, and that's the kind of the version that is third one that love that experiences even if your partner, for instance, is gone or not, like left you or dead, you still feel this love in your mind.
How about love and hate though? So that's like the contradiction of love, but that's intent. The first reason, and that's next to that at the argument. So let's see.
Stuffing is really the first one of stuffing. I discovered is like the one that happens when you kind of fall in love, but it's also the one that it's the most volatile. So they pick their nose on the first date, and if something immediately shuts down and immediately and that's how fast it is. And the first thing is like good test bed, because you really can find someone charming for 35 minutes, and then they say one thing, and then you drop, and it's like, that's you.
One more.
Only men.
I know.
Thank you for your talk. So I'm surprised that you didn't emphasize dopamine, even though that it's involved in behaviors. But love is an act of behavior. So the role of dopamine in our acts of behavior and the reinforcement of our behaviors. Can you?
So in terms of stages, it's the one that has to do with typically dopamine ties to motivation and reward, and it's a very long-term effect. And this one definitely has to it's. I'll give you a story, anecdote that will kind of nicely demonstrate its role. Dopamine is the one that you get typically if you have Parkinson's. So because it has to do with motivation, it basically either suppresses a tremor or makes people kind of initiate action. So it's a very kind of useful drug to get for people who have Parkinson's, and it's almost the go-to option in the form of a kind of medicine. Since the early 80s, when they distilled it into a kind of clear amount you can give to a person in a pill, kind of almost not over the counter, but like very easily, people started to get it as the first kind of option when they have behavior issues that kind of are coming from Parkinson's, tremors, light, and so on. But what's happening afterwards is that in the 80s, they start giving it to other people, and they monitor those people over time. And when they created the drug in the FDA, they measured it for like efficacy and all the things that you measure when you give people drug. What they didn't plan for is the behavioral effect that comes afterwards when it comes to love and other behavior. Many of the people who got the Parkinson's drug version 1, within 2 or 3 years, started reporting that they end relationships, they become a lot more kind of dishonest. Like they had a lot of affairs. They started to gamble a lot. It amplified a version of love that is not attached to one person. It's the motivation for love was bigger than the relationship. To date, if you buy the drug and you get it in a pharmacy, it's still the same drug. It just says on the label very big time, if this makes you want to leave your husband or gamble, go call a doctor. We found a solution because it's the same effect. It actually, so we know now what the behavior, and now doctors will monitor that, and they would actually give it to you. But they say, look, if it makes you want to kind of behave differently, talk to us because we control the dose. So we know what's the outcome, but it's still the same effect. And what we know is if you don't take this thing, you just measure your brain, we'll see that people that tend to have more promiscuous relationship, more kind of interest in adventures, in sexually and so on, have amplified levels of dopamine. So I didn't say writing. I'm going to say maybe that is a closer. I spoke about the neuroscience of love, very kind of mechanical, right? I spoke about chemicals in the brain and so on. There's a sociology of that I kind of overlooked, but it's everything that we said is riding on that. I'll give you what I mean by that. The version of love that many people, I would guess in this room, have right now is the one that a lot of us were kind of raised on. It's one man, one woman. They meet, they fall in love. After 2 years, he proposes to her. They have 2 babies. That's kind of that Hollywood is based on that. That's the one that most books and most plays are on. But it's partially the reality of the last 40 years in the U.S. And it's partially the outcome of like your grandmothers didn't even have the chance to get divorced. Like if your grandma was not happy, that she opted that the grandfather liked people. That's really your moms already had a little bit better life. They could divorce. So our parents lived in a world that's a little bit more open towards women, and they could leave if they weren't happy. Our generation lives in a world that we live if we can be happier. So we don't just like leave because it's not good. We someone see like someone more attractive on the Tinder app, and then say, okay, I'm done with this guy. I'm gonna move. So this and the point is that every generation makes what's acceptable different, to the point that the generation, I would say, one below us, so the ones that are right now in their early 20s, are a lot more. First of all, the notion of like binary kind of is becoming a lot loose. Like people are there are a lot more people that are gay or lesbian, and it could be that there's just more of them, or it could be that we just accepted right now this and it become people just count. They say I was always, but before it was not okay to be. Now I want. So we don't know what's the code, but there's a lot more. Like the numbers were 7%, now the 70%. So of the population, so a lot more. And also, sexuality has changed. If your mom told her mom 30 years ago that she has 2 boyfriends and she's in a polyamorous, it would be kind of a jump in the house. But right now, if you go to NYU or Columbia and like, oh geez, all the things that were really kind of, there were taboos 10 years ago are now becoming more and more mainstream. And in that sense, all the things that I talked about right now were underwriting or our assumptions that that it's good to have like a stable relationship. Or that if she leaves him and she starts dating 10 other men, it means that we need to fix her because the dopamine is something great. But you can say, okay, that's like finally it's good. Like we give the dopamine, and finally she dates 10 men. So we have this kind of sociology on what is good or bad, and the neuroscience is kind of writing on those assumptions, and these are not necessarily true. Like nature doesn't really say couples have to be men and women that meet at age 30 and have 2 babies. This is kind of sociology. Once we kind of work through those two, we can do the science a little bit different.
Before I give a toast, because at the Brain Bar, we end the night with a toast. Ayaka, she has synesthesia. So she sees colors and the energy in the room and then plays her music. Can you give it up for Ayaka? I want to call up Jill, and you give the toast.
Just to understand that you really don't know what is going on inside. We all have something going on, right? Everybody may look perfect on the outside, but you don't know what's going on inside. And I love that t-shirt, empathy. It's true. Like, I wish my siblings, like, everybody thinks you look okay, you're good. You know what? Don't judge.
The greatest gift anyone could ever have is being able to understand what the other person is going through, putting yourself in their shoes, and really feel what the other person is going through. So, thank you, Jill.
No, thank you.
And thank you for coming to the Brain Bar.